Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Please excuse the absolute mess going on behind me. I've literally just finished filming some main channel content. Main channel content? I only have one channel, what am I on about? I'm a little bit delulu right now, but it's fine. We thrive, we move on. So today is going to be another reading vlog. This is specifically going to be a hopefully I get out of a slump reading vlog. I feel like I'm already halfway there, so that's a good thing. I actually did film this intro like a couple of days ago, but I wasn't happy with it, so I'm back filming it now. And at that time, I was below 50% of the way through the book that I mentioned, but now I'm over halfway through the book that I mentioned, so I'll get onto what that book is in a minute. But just to give you some context, because I don't know which way I'm going to upload these videos, so there is a reading vlog that I filmed and I have yet to upload before this one, where I read 2 books in April, and both of those books are featured in that reading vlog, and I just had such a crappy reading month in April. So the second book that I ended up reading in April, I struggled with. April just altogether was just a really hard reading month for me. The first book that I read was okay, and then I was expecting the second book to be really good, and that was just also okay, but that took me a long time to get through because it was incredibly boring and really slow paced. And then I was like, oh my god, I don't want to read and I don't even want to film or edit any content. Like, that is how bad the slump hit me, and I didn't want to upload content because I felt like it felt really inauthentic at the time. And obviously I made the reading vlog because regardless of whether I'm reading a lot or not, and whether I'm in a reading slump or not, I think it's good to show those two sides, like a month that I've read loads and been really in a good reading mood, and the month where I was in a really bad reading mood, because we all have those months, okay? It's fine, we all get back on track at some point. So anyway, this is the reading vlog where I will redeem myself and I will read some good books and some books that make me want to read again. The first book that I'm going to be reading in this reading vlog is Mile High by Liz Tomforde. Now, I can't remember whether it was TikTok or Instagram, but I have a funny feeling it might have been Instagram where I saw this one. I follow a specific bookstagrammer and she uploads a lot of like romance book content, and romance has quickly become a genre that I've really started to enjoy. I'm still finding my feet in terms of like what I love about romance books and kind of like finding specific authors whose books that I really love. I saw something on this book, I don't know what it was, whether it was, I feel like it was one of those videos where it was like, oh, they keep their romance secret but then something happens, you know, one of those like catchy little videos where it kind of gives you a snippet of a situation that happens in the book and then you're like, oh my god, I need to read this. I feel like it was one of those. And anyway, I saw something about this book, I learnt that it was a hockey romance, and automatically I needed it because I love any sports romance now that has anything to do with a sport on the ice. I'm fascinated. Ice skating, hockey, I love it. This book basically follows a woman named Stevie, and she works as an air hostess on private charter flights, and this particular plane that she is going to be working on is going to be full of a specific hockey team, and her crew are basically going to be their crew for the whole NHL season. That's pretty much what sold me as well, because I love anything to do with air hostessing. That is probably my #1 most fantasized about job role, but I can't do it because I'm too short, which is very annoying. Like, I could do it now with tattoos. Like, there are companies that are taking on with people with tattoos as long as they're not offensive. I'm just not tall enough, which is so annoying. What I'm saying is that I would very much like to be an air hostess, just because I don't want to settle down. I love the idea of traveling, and I just want to be an air hostess. I've gone off on a tangent, I'm so sorry. Anyway, this woman is an air hostess. She's going to be working alongside this hockey team, and then comes in this guy named Xander, and his first name is Evan, but they always call him by his last name. He is this cocky, egotistical like co-captain, and he's like the defender on the hockey team. He's got this reputation for sleeping around with a lot of women and just being like this playboy, and he's just not the kind of guy that you'd want to date. However, the trope is that he is this really tough exterior guy, but underneath he's really soft, and he feels a lot of things and he just doesn't let anyone in. Oh my god. And yes, I love that trope. I love it. I love it when the egotistical cocky guy actually turns out to be the sweetest person behind the scenes, and he's actually not a dick. Like, he's not horrible, which is what I love about him. Now obviously, as I said, I am already halfway through this book. I'm actually on, I think, 75%, and I actually think that I could finish this tonight, so you could be seeing my first update tomorrow, but I will let you guys know. But this book has just, I feel like it's got me out of my slump. Like, I absolutely love it. The only thing I would say is that I do feel like it is a very long book. I think the paperback is about 600 odd pages. My Kindle works out a little less just because of the format, but technically if I had it in paperback form, it does work out 600 odd pages. And I like, it's so quick and fast paced to read that I haven't really noticed it, but I do feel like some people might read this and think this is way too long for than what it needs to be. One of the things that I love is that there's plus size representation in this, and not just that, but there's also representation for anyone who struggles with kind of their body image and stuff. Stevie is very much this woman who kind of gives off this very confident energy, but underneath she's very insecure, and there are moments in her life that have made her that way, and she really struggles with that. And it's really nice to see kind of her go through that and how she deals with it, but also how Xander kind of helps her through stuff. Oh my god, he's the sweetest. I love him. He has become like #1 boyfriend. He's on the list, guys. He is on the list. I also love that these two have really bonded over their family trauma. I just think that's nice to see. I feel like the #1 thing that bonds people together in life is trauma. I also love the banter between Stevie and Xander, because obviously he's a cocky guy. He's always gonna be a cocky guy, but she gives it right back and she does not take his shit, which I so love. That's actually one of the reasons that he falls for her, because she isn't just one of these who's like, oh my god, Xander, he's a hockey player, like fall in love with me. She's not a pick-me girl, you know? But half the reason that she isn't like that is because I forgot to mention that her brother is actually a very big like NBL basketball player, and like she's obviously used to someone being close to her that's very famous, so in that way she's kind of not put off by these sportsmen who are very well known and hot, because her brother's a basketball player and like one of the biggest. I also really love the kind of like snippet of found family trope that's in this. There's not like an overly big deal, but I do like that it's there because it's one of my favourite tropes. And speaking of tropes, it also has the whole like forbidden romance thing going on, which I really love, because forbidden romance is one of my favourite things. It's like this whole like, we have to keep a secret but we're so madly in love with each other, and I love it. The smut for me is okay. Like, I don't mind the smut in this book. I feel like smut is either done really well or it's really bad, and I actually don't mind reading it in this book. I know smut isn't for everyone. I know some people find it really cringy, some people just don't want to read about it. I'll just let you know now, it has got some smut in it. There's not overly a huge amount, but there is enough there to keep me going. I'm just coming up to a bit now where there's kind of some turmoil in their relationship. I feel like it's like a little bit late on though. Like, I feel like it's taken a long time to get to this point. The thing about this book is that I see a lot of the things coming, so the turmoil that is happening right now, I knew that it would happen at some point, I just didn't know when. And I feel like it's really late on in the book, because I only have about just over 100 pages to go of this, so it's very late on, but I'm kind of excited to see how it carries on and then how it wraps up. I know that I think the second book is going to follow her brother and another character that is in this book, and I can't wait to see them because I really like her brother. Her brother is like just this really nice guy who, you know, he's concentrating on his career. He doesn't really care about a relationship. So I'm excited to see his story, because I also like who I think he's gonna fall in love with. Anyway, my camera is dying, but that's what I think of this book so far. I'm absolutely loving it. I definitely think this is going to be one of my favourite sports romance authors for sure, but I will update you guys when I have read some more. Okay, so it's a couple of days later now, and I actually have my first update, because the evening after I made that first clip, I actually managed to finish Mile High by Liz Tomforde, and I stayed up until 12 AM which is such a rarity for me because I am a grandma and I struggle to stay up past 9 p.m. I used to do it all the time when I was a teenager. Like, I used to stay up until 1, 2 o'clock in the morning finishing a book, even up all the way until like 3 or 4 a.m. and I struggle to do it now. I just can't do it, and as much as I might be engrossed in a book, I just find myself falling asleep. I've literally fallen asleep with my Kindle in my hand before. Like, it's just a struggle. So I'm really surprised that I managed to stay up that late to read and finish a book. So I actually rated the book 4 stars in the end. That's actually higher than I thought I would ever rate it. Not because I was expecting it to be bad, but just because I wasn't expecting to love it as much as I did. The biggest drawback to this book is that I do feel like it's really long, and I do feel as if it could be cut back a little bit more. I mean, it's like 600 pages. That's long for a romance book, and I do feel like a lot of people would end up DNFing it, especially if the plot isn't moving along fast enough. And I do feel like if it was shorter, the author could have included a couple of like the therapy session scenes. So towards the end of the book, things are kind of rectifying themselves. Progression with the characters' relationships with their parents are happening, and some of it means that the characters go into therapy, and I feel like I would have enjoyed seeing some of those scenes a lot more. I know that the guy, Xander's, he was already in therapy, so it would have been nice to kind of like see like that kind of happen. I did really like the ending. The ending gave me fuzzy feelings. I'm a sucker for a happy ending, and I think what made this particular happy ending a really enjoyable one was the fact that it wasn't one of those stereotypical, it's like 5 years later and now they're married and they have kids. Spoiler alert, that's not the ending. It's just a really nice, mushy, happy ending without the whole white picket fence thing, which I always tend to hate. I'm just not into the white picket fence thing. I don't want kids, and I'm not overly massively keen on marriage. Like, I think it's a nice idea, but I also think that a lot of people tend to get married for the legal reasons nowadays, but like, I don't think it's necessary. And so like, I just find it really generic, and I just don't like it because I don't envision that ending for myself. And so when I read characters have that ending, I'm like, ugh. What I also really liked was the fact that Xander's is like this bad boy, and his whole career is based off of this persona that he's put on, and he's thinking is that if he lets go of that persona, he won't have a career anymore. But what I liked about it the most was that he was secretly a soft boy, and my favourite thing about that was that even though he had this persona, he was never an asshole. Like, I find sometimes in books there's like this bad boy, but they also say the most like malicious things, and he wasn't like that. He was just so sweet and so lovely, and it was really nice to see, because although he did still manage to pull off that whole persona that he had, he was never cruel. I also really like the fact that a lot of this relationship was built around kind of Stevie finding her confidence, because I love the fact that she was this female character who was confident but yet also really shy and lacked a lot of actual confidence. Like, she was very insecure, especially about her body, and I loved seeing the book progress and seeing her kind of build that confidence back up after people had knocked it down. I loved the fact that Xander was so sweet about it as well. There was literally a scene and it just made my heart do things. She was having like one of these off days, and they literally stood in front of a mirror, and he was like, okay, well, tell me what you do like about yourself, and she had like maybe 1 or 2 things to say, and then he was like, okay, then like tell me everything you don't like, and she was like, what? And he's like, well, you're only giving me 2 things that you like about yourself, so what are all the things that you hate? And it was just the cutest thing ever, and it made me want to die. So yeah, total 4-star read. I have heard that the second book is even better. Like, people loved it even more than the first one, which I'm super excited to see because I love this book so much, and I can't wait to see how the second one tallies up to the first. So now I'm going to talk about the second book that I've decided to pick up, and I have decided I'm going to make this a sports romance reading vlog because I am in the mood for romance and I'm in the mood for sports. So I think out of every genre or like subgenre of romance, I actually feel like sports romance is my favourite. There's something about the tension of the sport mixed with the build up of the romance that just does something for me. Like, I love it. It's my favourite. So the second book that I decided to pick up was actually also on my TBR, and that's Throttled by Lauren Asher. This is a Formula One based romance. So this follows a young woman named Maya, and she has just graduated from university, and her brother Santiago happens to be a professional Formula One driver. He's just signed a contract on to a very big Formula One team, and he is in this team with his biggest rival, who he calls issues for, called Noah. And Noah is like this really broody, really arrogant, awful guy who basically sleeps around with a bunch of women. As we know, this seems to be a running theme in sports romances, and I'm absolutely okay with it. And basically Maya decides that for the whole Formula One season she's going to follow her brother around to all of his tournaments, and basically she's going to vlog because she doesn't really know what she's doing with her life, and she feels like she lives in her brother's shadow, and she's basically gonna vlog and build up a following on social media and have a fun time. And honestly, I'm really jealous. And obviously things are gonna ensue with Maya and Noah. So I can't remember how far I'm into this yet, but I am over halfway already. I have already been reading this for a couple of days. I think I've maybe been reading it for 3 days, I think, but don't quote me on that. But I am 68% of the way through. I am actually really enjoying this. I don't think I'm going to end up rating it as highly as I did Mile High. I just feel like there's something missing for me, and I'm not quite sure what it is. I think the book took a little while for me to get into at the beginning, but once it got started I was like, okay, I'm into this now, like let's get going, like I love this. But there's definitely like an instant attraction between Maya and Noah, and a lot of it is very like physical, which is fine, love that, but I don't know if it's been built up enough for me to feel strongly about them. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm really enjoying it, but there's just something that's not clicking for me. I do really find the dynamic between Noah and his dad really interesting, because his dad is quite abusive. Bearing in mind, Noah is, I think he's in his 30s. I think he's like 30 years old, which is not like a weird thing, because his dad is basically a old school like Formula One champion, so everyone like idolizes him, and no one sees behind the scenes that he's like this really horrible abusive guy, and his mum is basically absent. So I really like the fact that he has kind of this very toxic relationship going on with both of his parents. It's interesting to see, but yeah, there's just not something quite clicking for me, but I am finding it really enjoyable. I haven't really made many notes on this book yet because I really want to wait until the end of the book to kind of formulate how I feel, but it's okay. I'm enjoying it, and I definitely think that I will read on with the series once I'm finished with this book. Obviously not straight away, because I already have my next book picked out, which I'm not going to tell you what it is yet, but I'm liking it. It's okay. Like, it's not, it could have been a lot worse, because this one is very much a Booktok hyped up book, so it could have been a 1 star. It could have been so much worse, but it's not. I'm enjoying it, and it's okay. Anyway, I will update you guys once I'm probably finished with this book. Okay, so it's now the next day, and I already have an update because a little bit earlier on I did finish Throttled by Lauren Asher. This is my first ever Lauren Asher book, and I didn't really know what to expect when I went into it, but I did rate it a 3 star, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. For me, it was a pretty good 3 star. Usually 3 star for me just means like it was an okay book, and for me this was an okay book, but it was also very enjoyable. I would probably put it on the same wavelength as the Twisted series by Anna Huang, because that series I also rated all of the books 3 stars, and it wasn't necessarily because they were bad, but I found them okay, but they were really entertaining, and obviously I read that whole series, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to do the same with this series as well. So each book follows a different, I think, Formula One driver. I think it's just going to follow all of the guys that you kind of meet in this first book. So I love the fact that this was slow burn. It wasn't the slowest slow burn I've ever read, and it's probably not my favourite either. For some reason, even after I read the ending of this book, I do still feel like there was something missing, and I think the thing for me is I wish that there was more drama, and I wish that there was more build up in terms of the relationship, because for me all of the action and suspense and stuff really happened towards the second half of the book, and really, I mean, the action part happens all the way at the end of the book. And there was one particular problem that Maya faced, and it resolved very, very quickly. Like, it was like it happened in this one scene and then all of a sudden it was resolved. And I kind of feel like I wish that part of the story had way more build up than it did, and I wish that it had kind of gone on for a little bit longer than it did, but it almost felt like it happened so far at the end that it almost had to be wrapped up very, very quickly. I did, however, really love the ending. The ending had me swooning, and Noah is added to the list of book boyfriends. The list is ever growing and I'm absolutely okay with it, but now it's got me feeling like I could absolutely go to a Formula 1 race and fall in love with a Formula 1 driver. I definitely would say that I preferred the second half of the book to the first half. I don't think there was anything necessarily wrong with the first half. It definitely is a very, very slow burn and it takes a while to kind of like get it going, but if you're okay with kind of like a slower start, then you might kind of love this book all of the way through. One of the only other things that I would mention is I really didn't like Santiago. He was a piece of work. I don't like how he treated Maya. I feel like he treated her like, obviously they're siblings and there's going to be some sort of like overprotectiveness there, but I almost feel like he treated her like a child all the time. I do also wish that there had been kind of like more tension between Noah's dad and the whole like relationship going on, because I also feel like that's something that happened really quickly. It was almost like he was a bit nosy and things started happening and it all just happened very, very quickly, and I almost feel like I wish there was more build up to that and I wish that there was more drama involved with that, because oh my god, his dad is a piece of work. So yeah, those were a couple of the gripes I had. I did really like it. It was such a fast-paced read for me. I think I read it in a couple of days, so it's not like the fastest book that I've ever read, but in terms of the writing I just found it really entertaining and it was really fast-paced in that way. Anyway, that now brings me on to the third and last book that I'm going to mention in this reading vlog, because obviously I'm going to make this a whole sports romance ordeal, and this is also a book that I haven't mentioned on my May TBR, so this is a little bit of a surprise, but I'm going to be reading Kulti by Mariana Zapata. She is the same author that wrote From Luke Off with Love, which I read last year. It was my first book from her and I absolutely fell in love with it. That was all about two figure skaters and oh my god, it was chef's kiss. The best slow burn romance I've read so far. And this actually follows a football player. Soccer, if you're American, I am going to refer to it as football because European and we play football with our feet. So I'm going to call it football, so don't get confused. So this follows a 27-year-old young woman named Sal, and she basically plays football and she's idolised this football player called Rainer Kulti. He all of a sudden becomes her coach for her team. She quickly realises that he is not all he's made up to be, and she then doesn't understand why she idolised him for so long. I'm gonna guess he turns out to be a little bit of a dick, but I'm excited for this because From Luke Off with Love was the best slow burn. I'm hoping that this is also a slow burn because oh, they're just so frustrating in the best way possible. For me, I love a little smut in romance, right? I love smut, but I live for those like little build-up moments, like when the guy protects the girl from, I don't know, her family or from some guy that's coming on to her, or he just brushes hair out of her face, or they're so close to kissing but then they don't, and I live for those moments. And From Luke Off with Love had a lot of those moments and it was the greatest thing I've ever read. I'm gonna start this evening. I very much doubt I'm gonna read loads tonight, but I am gonna get started. This is a little bit longer than the last book that I read, but not as long as Mile High. So I will update you guys when I have something to update you on. First of all, just excuse the fact that my hair is a little bit crazy right now because I just took rollers out. I'm trying to be a little bit more of a woman. And I'm learning to use rollers. I've never really used them before other than my fringe, and I think I'm doing a good job. I think I was gonna sleep in them and I feel like if I'd woken up like this I wouldn't have minded, but I had visions of waking up and my hair being really frizzy and then not being able to get the rollers out, and I just don't have the time in the morning to be able to do that. Second of all, excuse the fact that I'm in pyjamas. I can't help that, okay? It's that time of day. My eyes are really itchy. Is anyone else suffering right now? Because I am. Anyway, I am coming at you with an update because I am now 24% of the way through Kulti. I'm not sure when I started this book, but it was definitely quite a while ago. I'm just gonna click off the vlog I'm watching. Does anyone else on here watch a guy named Adam Hatton. He does like Disney vlogs and he's my favourite person to watch because Disney stuff just feels like serotonin, like Disney World stuff. But I particularly love Adam Hatton, especially when he goes away with his friend, whose name I can't remember and I feel really bad, but they're really funny together. But he just released like a 4-hour vlog and he went away with like other people, and I just love his vlogs. They just like give me such good vibes. They're so mood boosting. I love them. Anyway, that was a complete tangent. So I started reading this book 4 days ago, which actually isn't as long as I thought it was. I honestly thought it was creeping up to a week. I mean, it technically is, but got a couple of days before that. So I'm 24% of the way through Kulti, and I am not gonna lie, I'm struggling. I wasn't expecting an age gap. There's a little bit of an age gap in this book, which I don't actually think I've read a book with an age gap romance, and the only reason I'm mentioning that is because there is an emphasis on it in the beginning, because she talks about idolising this guy when she was like a younger kid, and now obviously she's 27. I can't remember how old he is. I think he's like 11. No, I think he's like 13 years older than her. So I wasn't expecting that. I also wasn't expecting that aspect of her idolising this guy, because he basically is a professional footballer and I think he's retired at this point. One of the things I don't like is that there's so much emphasis on the football here. I'm not a huge football fan, alright? I'm gonna admit. I mean, I don't mind watching the World Cup, but yeah, there's so much emphasis in this book on like the fact that she plays football, and there's so much like football stuff going on. And I'm gonna be honest, when I read From Luke Off With Love, obviously that book is a slow burn romance, and I also believe that this is a very slow burn romance as well. And as far as I'm aware from reading reviews, I think people have said like she's the queen of slow burn, which I don't mind. I love slow burn, and I think I mentioned this at the beginning, like I love those like little lead up moments. But I'm struggling with this. Like, I'm not feeling a connection between the two main characters at all, like Kulti and the woman whose name I can't remember but is the main character. I'm just not feeling the vibes of them at all. Like, usually when I read a book and there's like a little romance going on, like even before anything's happened, like I get these little like fuzzy feelings, and I'm not feeling that here, and I don't know why. But also I know it's slow burn, but this is beyond slow, and I've struggled to even get to the 20% mark. And I'm gonna be honest, like I have at least one more romance on my TBR for this month, and I also wanted to try and get through some of the romances that I put on last month's TBR, but I'm slowly getting out of a romance mood now, and I honestly think that this book is the cause of it. Like, I mean, it's getting me in a mood where I'm on my phone a lot, and I always know that when that happens I'm not overly keen on a book. And at the minute I'm just watching vlogs. I'm watching a lot of Disney vlogs and just scrolling on TikTok, and that's not a good sign. Anyway, those are my thoughts so far. That's how far I am into the book. I will come back to you guys with an update, or when I've read more of the book, or when I've finished. But I'll give you an update then, because I don't really have much to say other than what I've just said. First of all, just excuse the mess behind me. I didn't want to deal with that before I put on the camera. And second of all, yes, I am wearing pyjamas. I feel like that's a running theme for my videos, and you're just gonna have to deal with it. So I officially finished Kulti 2 or 3 days ago now, I think, and I am going to share my thoughts. This is going to be the last update on this reading vlog, so yay, I got through 3 books. How exciting. Now, I had to be really critical when it came to giving Kulti its rating, because I really loathed the first 40% of this book, and then I really loved the last 60%. The last 60% of the book was more of what I was expecting. The first 40%, like, Kulti doesn't even speak. Like, he doesn't say a word, and if he does, he'll say like one word and that's it. And so you can't really feel a connection to him and Sal, and so it's really hard to kind of picture them getting along and getting into a relationship in this book at any point, and it was just really, really tough. If I hadn't have read a book by this author prior to this one, and I kind of knew where it was going or whatever, I probably would have DNF'd this. It was tough. It shouldn't take 40% of a book for me to get into it, and that's a really tough ask. So in the end, I gave it 3 stars. I honestly was thinking of giving it 4 just because of the last 60%, and then I was like, no, I can't do that, because there's a couple of things that have really griped me in this book, and plus it was just really slow. Now, I know that this author is the queen of slow burn, and I love that because I love a good slow burn, but it wasn't so much that it was slow burn, it was just slow going. Also, this was something I found really weird. So Sal has a brother Eric, and he is mentioned throughout the book. We never meet him. She has like a couple of phone calls with him, but you don't really get to see the phone calls, you just hear about them after she's had them. Also, she has a really rocky relationship with her younger sister Cece, who is like 10 years younger than her, and they don't get along, but that whole relationship is never really mentioned at the end, and nothing throughout the book is done to resolve that or kind of like touch upon why they have a difficult relationship. It's almost like you're just kind of left to figure out why they don't get along. And although you don't really see her much throughout the book, like she's mentioned a lot, and I can imagine like as the younger sister of like 2 football stars, she must feel like really overshadowed and all of that, but like it's not touched upon. Like they don't do anything to try and resolve it. They don't really have many interactions. She has no interactions with Kulti at any point. It's just weird. Like, it just felt very odd that these 2 characters were mentioned, especially Cece, and then nothing was done about it in the book. And that's another thing, because I felt like Sal, so Sal is 27, and obviously this is a bit of an age gap romance. Sal is 27, he's near his 40s, I think he's like 38 or 39 I think, which isn't a weird age gap. Like personally it's not weird, like, and this is the thing, like I was finding it weird because Sal came across as very immature. Like one of the things that really annoyed me was that there were things mentioned constantly, like, so to get over her attraction that she felt towards Kulti, she would always mention poop and the fact that, okay, he's human and he poops and like whatever, and literally, I kid you not, some of the sentences in this book were just poop, 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 and she would constantly do it, and it was so irritating. Like once or twice, fine, I get it, like we've all done it, we've all been like, oh, there's a celebrity, oh, and they shit and puke and whatever too, but like to keep mentioning it was really irritating. Really irritating, and it just came across really immature. And then the whole fact that it was being mentioned that she was a fan of his when she was a child, it just made the age gap for me really weird. And I know it's not that weird because like loads of people have a similar age gap when it comes to relationships. I don't know why, but just reading about it just felt weird. And I also felt like the ending was sort of rushed. Like I would have enjoyed kind of basking in their relationship a bit more. There was not really any time to bask in them being a couple. It was as if so much time was spent making them argue with each other and then becoming friends. And then when they finally kind of like had this relationship, it was like, okay, right, time to wrap it up, guys. Whereas I felt like when I read From Luke Off With Love, it was like like the build up was so well done, and it just didn't feel the same in this book for me. I did really enjoy them becoming friends, and I did really enjoy the romance, but something just felt off for me. It didn't feel quite the way I like it. I do have to say though, Sal's nicknames that she kept coming up for Kulti were hilarious. Like at one point I was chuckling out loud because she called him sauerkraut. And I just thought it was really funny. She just would come up with the most hilarious nicknames, but the sauerkraut really got me. That really tickled me. Also, let me just say, I have never had a scene in a book make me laugh so much, and even thinking about it now makes me giggle. I'm obviously not gonna spoil it for anyone because I like to keep these reading vlogs fairly spoiler free. At the beginning of the book, she does this press conference. You don't see it, but you see the aftermath, and basically she talks about how she was really embarrassed, like she embarrassed herself, like she's dreading the tapes coming out, and like she's super scared, and like her coach is laughing about it because it's funny, but you don't know why. You don't know what the embarrassing thing is that she did. You don't know why her coach is finding it so funny. And then right towards the end of the book, you see the scene play out because she actually asks about what happened to the tapes because they're never released. And like, honestly, it was the funniest thing, and it's honestly something I can imagine myself doing because quite often when I talk, my brain doesn't catch up with my mouth, and so things just come out. After I've said them, I'm like, I just said that, didn't I? So it's something I can imagine myself doing, but honestly, I was laughing out loud. And when I read kind of like the first bit that was funny, I was like, oh, this is hilarious, this is golden. And I thought that was it, but then she said something else, and that was even funnier. And And I can still remember it because it was just way too funny. I literally had tears in my eyes. So those were my thoughts on Kulti. It was slightly disappointing just because the first half was really slow. I did really enjoy it though, and I still love this author's books, and I definitely will be reading more of her stuff because I really love the romance that she writes. I think it's just spot on. It has the slow burn that I love. It has those little moments that lead up to like the big thing, and then the tiniest little peppering of smut at the end. It's just, I just love her formula for writing romance. It's just, I love it. I would have to say she's probably one of my favourite romance authors. Probably definitely top 3 or at least top 5. So that was the end of the reading vlog. I really hope that you enjoyed this very sports romance filled reading vlog. I had a blast doing this because sports romance has fast become one of my favourite romance genres. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you read any of the books that I did in this reading vlog, please let me know what you thought of them below. If you also have any recommendations for any other sports romances that you think I should read, please leave those in the comments below as well, because I'd love to read them. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you want to see more content from me. Until the next video, I will see you then. So bye guys.